We'll go back and forth, starting from my left and going to my right once again. This is Dr. Bratt. Why does the CNSC state that nuclear plants give off radioactive toxins? And at every meeting with Bruce Power, they tell us just the opposite.
I can't speak for Bruce Power, but what I can say is the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission does produce these stats. I actually have the most recent one, radioactive release data from Canadian nuclear power plants, 1999 to 2008. That's their job. If you go to the Bruce Power website, it also releases data on what they have. I can't comment on what they've said publicly, but I know if you go to their website, you can access that.
Okay, thank you. Question for Dr. Caldicott. Isn't it true that an airline pilot receives a higher exposure to radiation than a nuclear worker? Nuclear power station.
You've got to say nuclear. No, not nuclear. Nuclear. Your question is to say nuclear. You all got to pronounce it properly, so you're legitimate. Yeah, airline pilots do get a lot of radiation from the sun, cosmic radiation. They have a higher than normal incidence of malignant melanoma. The air hostesses have a higher than normal incidence of breast cancer. So if you spend a lot of time in the air, and I do, it's relatively dangerous. Background radiation that we get on the Earth is about 170 millirads a year. And that obviously causes much of the cancer we already see and genetic disease, but we must under no circumstances increase the amount of radiation we are receiving by increasing background radiation from artificial sources. And I just want to mention, if there's a meltdown in the reactor, and you know, Sweden nearly melted down and 3 Mile Island did, and yours could, you won't be here. And there's a study here about a meltdown at Indian Point, 35 miles from Manhattan. And the pilots flying into the World Trade Towers had actually targeted those 2 reactors but thought they were protected by missiles, and they were not. If they'd done that, they would have destroyed the financial centre of the world.
Thank you. Dr. Bratt, has a plant ever been decommissioned in Canada? If not, how can life cycle CO2 emissions and final costs be compared to other power sources? And there's a supplementary question. Also, the waste involved after decommissioning.
Gentilly 1 in Quebec, decommissioned, and a number of the early research reactors from the late 1940s have been decommissioned as well.
Okay. Second part. If not, how can life cycle CO2 emissions and the final cost be compared to other power sources? Can you do that?
Well, as I said, the MIT study, the Alberta Research Council that looked at life cycle greenhouse gases included decommissioning in there. There have been decommissioning of reactors around the world, and those reactors that I just cited in Canada.
And also the waste involved after decommissioning. So, where's it going? I think
the waste is still stored on site as they are in every other nuclear power plant.
Decommissioning is actually more expensive than building the reactor itself. There have been no civilian reactors per se decommissioned, and what you have to do is let them cool for decades. That means radioactively cool, and then they have to be cut apart by remote control using robots. And all of that stuff is radioactive waste. So that adds to the amount of waste. I don't know how much waste you've got in Canada, but in America they've got 64,000 tonnes and they keep making more.
Thank you. Dr. Caldicott, does our farmland become endangered?
Yes. And the other thing is they have, as well as routine releases, they have other releases where too much gas piles up and they purposefully release more radiation, and also into the water. A lot of what is called CRUD collects. CRUD is an acronym for Chalk River unidentified deposits, but it's a nice name. And it comes from radioactive iron and cobalt and other elements that sort of cake on the internal pipes in the primary coolant. And about once a year, they release a fair bit of crud, and it's pretty nasty stuff, into the water supply. And I've written about that in this book. I got this information from David Lockbaum, a nuclear engineer. So there are a lot of things that happen at reactors that they don't necessarily talk about, but the nuclear engineers know about it.
Thank you.
There is, we tend to think here on the prairies we have the only farming communities in the country, but southwestern Ontario is also a major farming and agricultural area, and that is where the Bruce plants are in Kincardine. So we do have examples of reactors near farms.
And has anyone tested the produce from that area near the reactors?
There are ongoing, that was all part of the environmental assessment.
No, not environmental assessment. Have they assessed the products, the agricultural products, and measured the radioactive isotopes in the food?
I'm sorry. We'll go to the next question. This is for Dr. Bratt. Can the radioactive waste be processed so it can be stored where people live?
Right now, it's stored on site. And you say, you look at the Pickering plant, okay, next to the largest city in the country. So it's being stored where people are right now. And as Dr. Caldicott said, the waste is its most dangerous the moment it comes out of a reactor, and those first several years of a reactor. And so the answer is yes, we've been storing it there all along.
And there's a supplemental question on this. Can the waste be made clean so it won't cause health problems?
You can reduce the waste, and you can reduce the waste by recycling it, and you can deal in containment with it, but I don't think you can clean the waste. But I would ask the same questions about coal, gas, and oil. What do they do with their waste? Can they make it cleaner? We don't know, because we don't know how much waste there's been, because it's gone straight into the atmosphere.
Well, we do know what's happening because it's causing global warming, and we're all very worried about that.
I agree.
I just want to talk about this notion of recycling radioactive waste. As I said, 250 kilos of plutonium are made each year in a 1,000 megawatt reactor like the ones they want to build 4 of them here. And plutonium lasts for 500,000 years or 250,000 years, to be conservative. And that's very long-lived. So they say, well, we know how to fix that. There are only 2 elements that are fissionable: uranium-235 and plutonium. And you can make bombs out of both, and you can use them both to generate electricity. And the nuclear industry, for years, the physicists have been really dreaming about Generation 4 reactors. What they do is they take those spent fuel rods that I described, and they cut them apart by remote control using, you don't go near them, and then you melt them in concentrated nitric acid, dissolve them, and from that incredibly toxic solution, you precipitate plutonium. Now that's what the weapons industry did to make all their bombs. America made 77,000 in the years that it was doing it. And there are only 250 cities in the Northern Hemisphere. But anyway, you take the plutonium, and then if we're running out of uranium, which we will within 10 or 20 years, high grade, you put 5 to 15 tons of plutonium in a reactor, and the coolant is liquid sodium. And if any of you are chemists, you'll know the properties of liquid sodium. It explodes and burns when exposed to air. So if you get a crack in the pipe, you lose the coolant. The plutonium melts down, but 10 pounds is critical mass. And so if it melts down, there'll be a massive nuclear explosion that you could see from Mars, and scattering 15 or 5 tons of plutonium to the 4 winds, when hypothetically about a kilogram, hypothetically, if distributed, could kill every person on Earth. So and only 10% of the plutonium fissions into short-lived isotopes that only last 600 years. Only last 600 years.
Yeah, on the uranium, there is lots of